Hi, boys and girls. This is Ms. Kathy. I'm so happy you've joined me today for another story just for you. Today's story is A Man of His Word. Boys and girls who are true to their word walk in the footsteps of the Master. Jesus never said one thing and meant another, or made a promise except to keep it. Frank Stokes once knew an African boy who stumbled upon this truth when fewer years rested on him than the number of toes on his feet. One day he came down from his village to the mission house. He was a grubby little boy, which was not surprising, for his parents were pagans and not very clean in their habits. He was very shy, too. As Frank came out of the dispensary, he was standing in front of the door of the house, saying not a word. For many days the same thing happened, and Frank began to wonder why he came and what he wanted. At last he began to speak. "Want school," he said. "Want school." On inquiry, Frank learned that his name was Kwaku. Frank discovered, too, that the teachers didn't regard him as a very bright prospect for school, and that his parents weren't interested either. However, his persistency won the day. Frank bought him school clothes and a slate and chalk, and away he went to school, his face beaming. He wasn't a very good student, but he was earnest and diligent, so Frank had patience and let him remain at school, sleeping in the dormitory. 3 years went by. By this time, Kwaku had grown into a really nice boy, always clean, with his school clothes washed and pressed, and he was beginning to learn his lessons. Toward the end of the 3rd year, plans were set afoot for the school picnic. Books were to be finally laid aside, and the whole school would gather on the grounds for fun and games and plenty of good things to eat. Kwaku was looking forward to the picnic as eagerly as the rest of the pupils. The boy's parents were still not interested in his schooling, and Kwaku's father had been pressing to know on what day the school was to close so that the whole family could go off to the farm and do some work. Kwaku promised that he would be home to help as soon as lessons ended, for he was grateful that his parents had allowed him to stay at the school. Alas, poor Kwaku! He had forgotten that the school picnic was to be held on the day after school closed. What could he do? He had promised his father that he would come home to work as soon as his lessons were finished. For days he struggled with himself. Satan stood at his side, constantly saying, "Don't you miss the picnic! Don't you take any notice of your father!" Just before the end of the school year, the teacher taught the children in Bible class about obedience. Suddenly, Kwaku knew what he must do. He must show his parents that a Christian keeps a promise and is always obedient. True to his resolve, on the morning of the picnic, Kwaku rose up early and ran home to his father in time for an early walk to the farm. All day he worked hard and tried not to think of the wonderful things he was missing. When evening came and the students had returned home, Kwaku's teacher called at the boy's house. "Why didn't you come to the picnic?" he said. Kwaku hung his head, not knowing what to say in front of his parents. So the teacher asked his father. "Kwaku had promised to come to farm with me today," father answered. "But why didn't he explain that it was the school picnic day?" the teacher asked. "All the students love the picnic, and we expected Kwaku to be there." "Why didn't you tell me, Kwaku?" father asked. "I had promised you," Kwaku replied, "and my teacher has taught me that we must obey our parents. So I determined to keep my promise and go to the farm to work with you." Kwaku's heathen father was astonished. He said to the teacher, "If you can teach boys and girls to keep their promises, there must be something good about your Christian religion." Soon both father and mother were attending church, and it wasn't long before they were baptized and became members. What a happy day for Kwaku! All because a boy had become a man of his word.
The story you've heard today was first published as part of the Vacation Bible School program in the book God's World by the Review and Herald Publishing Association and the General Conference Sabbath School Department. If you are interested in any other products published by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, please visit AdventistBookCenter.com or call 1-800-765-6955.